We can't do anything about it at all, and everybody else can just play around. So if I lose this World Championship because something is happening like this, then it's not worth winning the World Championship.
Burns, though, was 5th on the road for day 2, and this gave him the advantage he needed, and he took the lead, closely fought by Marcus Gronholm. And yet, despite all this speed and fighting, again it would be about the final kilometre of the final stage of the day that mattered. Mitsubishi came up with a new plan.
Well, we hit on the idea of the possibility of a jump start. We left the option open to Tommy. He said if by any chance you accidentally jump the start, that would be a 10-second penalty. That appears to be what happened.
Tommy's 10-second penalty had yet to show up on the timesheets. Therefore, the two fighting it out at the top of the leaderboard were unaware. Gronholm and Burns nervously slowed.
How many seconds here?
The pair thinking they were forcing Mäkinen to be first on the road for day 3. But when the 10-second penalty was finally given, it was Gronholm who would road sweep for day 2, with Burns right behind him. Mäkinen would be 3rd. However, at the start line the following morning, Burns had a puncture, causing him to start the day behind Mäkinen.
Unlucky, huh?
But was this also tactics?
Absolutely not. He was just very unlucky to get a puncture when he did. And of course he had to stop and change his tyre. It meant he had to give away a place on the road.
We did have a puncture, full stop. We did have a puncture.
Whether tactics or not, the advantageous road position didn't help Burns, and it was Mäkinen who crossed the line the winner. But there was one final twist to proceedings.
Tommy got excluded. It was an irregularity on the turbo, and unfortunately we got thrown out for that.
So ironically, at the end of the day, the man that had run first on the road on both day 1 and day 3 would win the 2000 Rally Australia, proving that even with all the tactics, the slowing down and stopping, the jump starts and tyre changing all in fact were necessary. Marcus Gronholm, by the way, also went on to take the 2000 title. As we heard earlier in the show, Rally Australia was famous for its innovation.
From the beginning, I think they were more commercial and more innovative. How can we attract the spectators? How can we give the fans what they want and so on? And they were prepared to spend a little bit to gain a little bit.
The organisers in Australia were looking to make more of a show. And by compressing a stage into something that could be viewed throughout its length by spectators in artificial grandstands, this was a great way of bringing the sport to the people who wouldn't normally perhaps go out in the bush to watch.
The first attempts to bring rallying to the people were in various locations in the heart of the city.
We had one sensational special stage through the nightclub area of North Bridge, which had about 50,000 out-of-control people watching it.
It was a great, should we say, kick-off for the rally. You know, normally you set off and you just drove to the first stage, but, you know, you had this thing the night before the rally started in all floodlit. And, yeah, it brought a new dimension to rallying.
And then in 1992 came Langley Park.
That was something that was designed over a couple of bottles of wine one night. You know, between a couple of us, and we said, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? And we showed it to the government, and they said, you want to do what?
In the middle of one of the biggest cities, you know, in the southern hemisphere, they took the super special, they created the super special in the parkland in the centre of Perth. So quite extraordinary what they did. And I say it's been copied ever since.
I was able to see all the super stage for the window of my room in the hotel facing the Langley Park. So really was I take a lot of pictures because I cannot believe that this could be built and be part of the rally, you know. And in fact, this was the start of a new history in the rally.
Langley Park for sure it's still one of the best you know super specials because it's quite fast, flowing, and you know big jumps also there, and you know. Good place to come to watch because it's so easy and in the middle of the town.
But the grandstands are always full, and they made a big spectacle out of it. It was a super special, and then there'd be a big band on afterwards and a big party and fireworks and everything. So they really lifted the benchmark they were the ones who set what a super special should be.
And it didn't just stop at Langley Park. One word that's synonymous with the event is Bunnings.
We were standing in this big amphitheatre and we said, golly, there's about 8 roads come into here. We could build a huge spectator area and run 4 or 5 stages all coming in and out of the one place. And that's where the idea came from, and it was just a wonderful place.
They created that sort of looping effect where we all, for the whole day we kept coming back to the same place, where if you were a spectator you could move around just a little bit and see the cars several times and so on. And it did help to create that atmosphere of, it felt like a real rally because the stages were very real, but it was more like a spectator arena, everybody focused together.
But it was the combination of 3 jumps and a water splash that's ingrained in everybody's mind.
You made sure your belts were adjusted absolutely to the correct millimetre when you went over those.
You had the spectators in the distance, which you can't see from the TV camera, but a huge crowd of people looking up at the jumps, and you come into this arena and you come in so fast, and you got 3 big dips and 3 big jumps, and you can't wait to see what happens, and always some big air and some action.
This is also the scene of some of the most famous features of Rally Australia and indeed of the WRC ever.
I don't think anybody will ever forget seeing Colin coming down. He was the king of Bunnings.
Yeah, Colin was always the one that was that extra foot higher over the jumps.
Probably the most memorable scene for me of any rally sequence anywhere in the world is Colin McRae coming down through Bunnings through that series of jumps. It is just something to behold, and I'm sure you're going to show your people that bit of film, because I look at it and I still sort of brings goosebumps to me.
Jump.
So,
into
here you go.
6 left over jump, 50. Quick, crest and 4 left tightens, and 3 right minus tightens, and care forward and 2 left minus. And 3 right plus opens, into dip, and 6 right minus over jump. Okay. Did you like that, jumpy man? How are you on those jumps?
In 2001, however, it wasn't his flamboyant style that made Colin McRae headlines.
I got a headache.
2001 would also prove to be a controversial year for reasons once again of road position. Again, there were 4 people still in with a chance at the championship on this penultimate event. This year, the new scheme was that drivers were allowed to choose their position on the road, with the championship leader having first choice for day 1. That was Colin McRae, and he picked the lowest running position available. Unfortunately for him, the first day of 2001 was a year when the roads cut up badly, and on day 1 he struggled to match the pace of the leaders.
3 right minus open, don't cut.
It was Marcus Gronholm and Richard Burns who took the early advantage, despite Gronholm complaining of steering problems. The biggest drama of the day, however, was Carlos Sainz. A heavy landing broke his right rear suspension, and despite their best efforts, Carlos and co-driver Luis Moya were unable to fix anything in roadside repairs. They would have to face the wrath of the police and drive back to service. In the end, the Australian police turned out to be their saviours, escorting the Ford pair back, and mechanics frantically fixed the car. Sainz got back on the road, but any hopes of a good points haul were now out of the question. And the Ford dramas were far from over. At the Super Special later that night, drivers once again had to pick their road order for the following day.
It was a time when Colin was driving for us. He turned up late, so he got penalised. Basically, it meant he had to run first car on the road because he was late.
It was a rule that was tried just for the 1 year. The rule was fairly clear. Unfortunately, Colin and Nicky managed to cock it up. And unfortunately, rules are rules. I mean, it was a bit of a strange one, but it would have been difficult for the stewards to do anything else, I think.
And there was a bulletin to say if you weren't there, then you would get a penalty. Simply, Colin was a few minutes late. He missed his slot, and he got penalised for it. But that's not how rallying should be. Rallying is won on the stages. It's won through pure commitment and fast driving, and the fastest man should win.
Gary Connolly, clerk of the course, took a lot of negative press for his decision to uphold the ruling, but he remained steadfast.
They knew what they had to do. They knew they had to be on Langley Park at 7:30 or whatever it was to nominate their starting position. And Colin got distracted. Nicky wasn't managing him at the time. Nicky got involved in something else, whatever it might have been, probably something very, legitimate, as a co-driver has to do prior to a rally. But they screwed up, and sadly they paid the consequences.
When the stages started the following morning, it was Francois Delacour who turned up first at the stage start. He'd taken a 13-minute penalty and had graciously agreed to take over road sweeping duties for his teammate.
We were in the same team as Colin, and so we decided with Malcolm Wilson to check in early the day after to be in front of Colin to sweep the route for him. But unfortunately in Wellington Dam we had a big accident because it was very slippery. We did a mistake and I went direct to the hospital. So it was not a good souvenir.
McRae once again was first on the road and losing a second a kilometre to his nearest rival, who would finish 5th. But ultimately it was to be another great win for Marcus Gronholm, with Richard Burns taking second. The championship was still a four-way fight, but if Colin McRae had just turned up on time to that road position draw, his championship campaign may have ended very differently. Still to come on Greatest Rallies Australia. This rally is also notorious for some huge smashes. We have a look at some of the more dramatic ones. And Chris Atkinson gives us a guided tour over those famous Bunnings jumps. Welcome back to Greatest Rallies Australia. Another classic year of this classic event was 1991, when two giants of rally legend went head-to-head. Juha Kankkunen and Carlos Sainz had fought tooth and nail all year, and either could take the title. The penultimate event in Australia would turn out to be the decider.
It was a huge fight. It had been going on all year long. One guy would win one event and the other guy would win the next event. And Carlos, I think, psyched himself into believing that Australia was make or break.
And Carlos was always very good in Australia. He was always able to actually get the best pace and the best rhythm there, but same as you are, just two great drivers fighting it out.
The pair had swapped stage wins throughout the first day, with Sainz taking the advantage, and then on a night tarmac super special, Carlos rolls.
We have big asphalt tires and gravel suspension, and the car was lifting in one bend, in one hairpin, and it was going into wheels.
Day two, and after his previous evening's excursion, Sainz was keen to make up time. On the stage they called the roller coaster. Carlos is perhaps pushing a little too much.
Basically, well, I know a journalist that was standing there. He said they all jumped off the bank to run down and help. And before they'd even reached the road, jumping off the bank that they were standing on to watch, car starting up. And then 9,000 RPM, and the car came back up the road, and they're looking for it appearing back up the way it had gone down. No, not Carlos. It had gone off through the trees and exploded back up onto the road in a shower of foliage.
Still, Carlos continues chasing Kankkunen down, but only for 2 stages.
Very spectacular. As soon as the car stopped, the first thing, of course, that we asked to each other, Carlos asked me, Luis, are you okay? Yeah. And he said, Luis, do you think we can continue? And I said, Carlos, no, I think not anymore. I mean, the car was in pieces, as you've seen.
It's a huge roar. A couple of our mechanics are looking over the corner, and a big sort of shout, and I ran up to look, and we just saw this thing somersaulting through the air. Oh, who's that? Oh, that's Carlos. There was nothing to hit. It was in a huge open area, so the car just kept going, and it rolled and rolled and rolled 7, 8, 9 times, somersaulting. But as a roll, it looked very spectacular because everyone got to see it.
That crash had been the biggest of Sainz's career and lost him the '91 championship. Kankanen's next battle was with his teammate Oriol, the Frenchman taking the lead on day 2, only to lose out when he was forced to sweep the road at the start of the 3rd leg. That day would only get worse when his engine blew and he's forced to retire. Free of his 2 main rivals, Kankanen eased his Lancia home to win his 3rd consecutive Australian rally.
It was the toughest Australian rally what I have done. Really